We speak to Professor David Monyae, an Associate Professor of Political Science and International Relations. He's also the Director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Yesterday, we heard from the Ukraine and Russian representatives in the UN. The Ukrainian representative saying that the only guilty party is the Russian delegation, while you listen then to the Russian representative saying that his country cannot allow the people of Donbass and Luhansk to continue to suffer. I wonder, what is your reaction when you look at what we've heard so far coming out of that ongoing session?
The issue is that this conflict would have been avoided only if the Western world and Russia could have sat before the war and discuss issues and resolve some of the concerns of both parties. It appears that the Western world never listened to what President Putin was saying. And on the other hand, Russia could not go forward with a situation in which the 2 or up to 3 separate areas of Russia-speaking Ukrainian is being bombarded by the current Ukrainian government. Therefore, we are left with nothing else other than a war situation. And as it stands, it's just a matter of time. The Russians will be able to neutralize the Ukrainian government in no time, given the war power, the hardware military that is near the cities. This will come at a very high price in terms of human lives. But in the long run, it will be really hard for Russia if it stays in Ukraine as a conquering power. The same story that happened in Iraq with the United States, Syria or Libya. No country can conquer another country for too long if majority of the people are opposing the intervening regime.
Listening to what you're saying then, we saw yesterday them saying that they're beginning some kind of talks at the Belarus border, and we know that they've now said that they're hoping that yesterday is also going to continue into more talks and eventually possibly some kind of a negotiated outcome. I wonder, when you look at this, do you think at all, given how far the situation has gone, that we could see an end here, and what would that end look like?
The real end for President Putin, looking at the situation, he called upon the Ukrainian military to take over power, in a way, a coup within Ukraine, so that he's able to negotiate directly with the military. As it stands, the Ukrainian military still is loyal to the current regime. Therefore, I think this will leave President Putin and the Russian forces are left with no any other choice other than move into the capital. And the fear is that more people will definitely die. The kind of armaments that have been put together are massive. You cannot compare the Russian military with the Ukrainian. And therefore, all talk about sanctions and all other measures that are taken by the Western world, but it's limited. They are not on the ground. So in absence of them sending troops, there's absolutely nothing that Ukrainian government can withstand the kind of pressure from Russia.
One of the things that has been very clear, and it even came up as well in that session last night, is that it depends who you are watching or which source you are listening to in order to understand exactly what's going on the ground. You hear from Ukraine saying that it is in charge and in control of the situation, talking about some troops that have been killed from Russia. But you listen to Russia as well saying that it's got its firm control on this particular situation. I wonder, given the many different voices that are speaking to whatever end that they are speaking, how does the public then begin to decipher the truth as to understand exactly what is currently unfolding?
The very first casualty of any war is nothing else other than the truth itself. And currently, you can really see on the ground that the Russian military is much more superior. They've conquered the entire airwaves. There are no aircraft that can move into Ukraine. They control all airports, and they have an upper hand. However, the Ukrainian military and the people of Ukraine are really trying here and there there's no doubt that a few Russian soldiers will die. And this is war situation. And as we go in, chances of really destroying some of the buildings with civilian is very high. We've seen this in Aleppo. We saw it in Syria, where U.S. bombardment of cities killed a number of innocent people. So this war also will result in more people dying.
Now, Prof, one of the things, though, that we've also seen is, as we bring it back home now, the many positions or even varying statements that we saw, one, we see Durko releasing a statement calling for dialogue, and then we see another statement calling for, the withdrawal of Russian troops. And then we are also just hearing from the president another, varying view. I wonder what impact does this have, because we are still in BRICS, with Russia.
Indeed. I think this takes us back to 2011, where South Africa communication and action to side with the imperialist forces in Libya was disastrous. And we suffered out of that in terms of our credibility within BRICS countries, our credibility across the African continent. And yet again, and we are facing similar situation where the state, different arms of the state and departments and senior officials are not speaking with one voice. There is a need for a coherent South African foreign policy, which is quite clear, and it must be predictable. South Africa is anti-war, is pro-multilateral approach, and it seeks peaceful resolution to conflict. We all know that. It doesn't really matter where the conflict is. But having said that, we are part of BRICS. We need to see what fellow BRICS countries are doing. Brazil has abstained in the votes, and India abstained. And we should follow the similar situation, including China. We supposed to abstain in these votes, but at the same time open a way and pathway reaching to both parties to seek peace and ensure that we bring a resolution to this conflict.
Prof, as a final question, a humanitarian crisis is currently unfolding as Africans are trying to cross the border from Ukraine. We're hearing quite a lot of racial undertones from some of those who are there, who are saying that they're not even able to cross. Others are being, are claiming that they are being told to walk. And because they are black, as we saw some of the first-hand account, is this crisis really getting the attention it deserves?
Not really. And that task, it goes beyond the South African government. It also has to do with the media. Instead of following the echo chamber of Western media in terms of what needs to be reported, African media must focus on Africa's interest and African people. That's number one. Number two, you need to have a collective African government to speak with one voice and collect Africans and work with other countries. China has been able to evacuate its people, and there's nothing that stops South African government to request the Chinese government or any other government, India or any, including United States, to ensure that Africans are rescued from the war zone to the border, at the same time speaking to Poland and other neighboring Ukrainian countries to ensure that South Africans and Africans are treated fairly and rescued with standby rescue mission in those countries to bring them home safely.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time and those insights. That was Professor David Monyae, an Associate Professor of Political Science and International Relations. He's also the Director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg.